pop
All
out.
right.
And here we
All right. Well, now we welcome in my good friend, comedian. You might know him on the Howard Stern show and interviewing players at the Super Bowl and many other things. Mr. Craig Gass, how are you, sir?
I'm doing good. I'm trying to come up with a funny idea for the Super Bowl this year in New Orleans. Every year I try to come up with something silly and fun to do with the players. I'm a huge football fan, and I just do a theme, and I'm trying to think of the theme.
And are they good with this? Do they go along with this, or I'm sure you've had to have a few guys who are like, I don't know about this.
You know what you do is you just go in and you just spray it across as many players as possible, and you just try to just get the best sound bites you can. Sometimes I think I have bulletproof moments, like Super Bowl 50 was halftime was Coldplay. So I loved going up to all the players and going, man, Coldplay halftime show. What's your favorite Coldplay song? Every single one of them was like, man, I love all of them. They're all good. I go, yeah, but what's your favorite? And watching them hem and haw on that, there was one guy from the Denver Broncos who said, oh, you know what? I'm actually half white, so I know the answer to this. And I was like, oh, that's the kind of soundbite we're looking for. There was one right after this the pandemic. I got fat. I put on weight, and I was asking all the players. My birthday is about 2 weeks after the Super Bowl, so I started asking. It was the Rams and the Patriots, and I'm going around asking everybody, "Hey, it's my birthday in 2 weeks. How do I look like you in 2 weeks?" And there was a guy from the Rams who said, "Pray to Jesus," before I even finished the question. I was like, wow, that was a good one. But Rob Gronkowski, I said, Rob, it's my birthday in 2 weeks. How do I look like you in 2 weeks? He actually looked at me and went, oh, and he kind of looked me up and down and was like, how much time do you have? And I went, 2 weeks. And he goes, whoa, okay. Okay, 1,000 burpees a day, like right off the top. And I was like, what? And he goes, yeah, 1,000 burpees. Like, I was just sitting there going, Rob, do you think I could ever in a million years look like you, let alone like, he took it so seriously. So sometimes you get inadvertent comedy. And sometimes you just try to like, can I just set this up so it's just fail proof that you're just going to get funny responses to this. That's the key, is trying to come up with silly stuff. And you, like me, you're a huge sports fan.
Massive, yeah.
I know you love hockey. You got your season tickets for the Raiders, season tickets for Golden Knights. Don't you have season tickets for the Dallas Stars?
Yes, sir. All three.
So you're about to get Pete Carroll.
Yes.
Pete Carroll, as long as he gets players on his side, which the first thing he did when he came to Seattle is he got rid of almost the entire team in the first year, and he got a bunch of younger players. And then a year later, he got rid of half of that team, including people that were stars. And he just said, they don't want to play for me, man. I want to get guys that want to be on my team. And then
he's 74. Can he relate to these guys now?
They were saying the same thing about him 15 years ago when he came to Seattle. All I can say is that there is something about the mental attitude that he has that I agree with so much, which is that it's never over. You're still in it no matter how far you're down. And because of that attitude that he had, and he just happened to have a quarterback who had the same attitude, they were always within less than a touchdown every game for almost his entire run. And statistically, they changed the statistics at the end of the game so dramatically with their comebacks that we would be down 3, sometimes 4 or more touchdowns, and we just kept coming back in because his attitude and his quarterback's attitude was, we still got this. We still got this. I remember there's a moment, and we're going to get into the reason why we're here, was to talk about metal and about the band and song that we want to talk about. But I remember there was a game in the playoffs between the Seahawks and the Minnesota Vikings, where the Minnesota Vikings were down by 1 or 2 points, and they had made it to within the 5-yard line, and there's 2 seconds left. They're going to kick a field goal to win the game. They're within 5 yards of doing this, and the kicker missed the kick, and the Seahawks won. I saw somebody interview Pete afterwards, and he said, Pete, you know I've known you personally for about 20 years. I just want you to tell me and tell my audience what was going through your mind when they lined up to kick that field goal to win the game. And Pete said, what was going through my mind is it's not over. It's not like, because, I mean, it's really cold out. It was, 10 degrees out. So the football is going to be heavy. So they have to snap that ball, and it's going to be heavy. The place kicker has to catch it just right and put it in. It's a heavy ball, and the conditions are bad. I just thought there's no reason to think this game's over. And then they hang up the phone, and the interviewer goes, I knew he was going to say that, and I have to share a personal story about Pete. I've known Pete for over 20 years. We were in a men's basketball league for adult men in Los Angeles. It was a 3-on-3 league, and we had a game against 3 former NBA players who it's the first team to 20 wins, and these 3 former NBA players were up 15-0. When Pete grabbed me and the other teammate and said, guys, come here. This is great. We got them exactly where we want them. They think they're going to win now. This is amazing. And that's Pete's attitude, no matter how far down he is. And I think it's really important to have that attitude. We're gonna work our way back into this, and we're gonna win this game. And it's such a rare quality. It really does produce results as long as players are on his side with that. So the key is going to be what's going to happen when he shows up to run this team and look over these players. So.
Well, we'll see. I hope for all of my hardcore Raider fans like Kerry and James Hetfield and Phil Demmel that it works out. So we'll see.
Yeah, we'll see, man. But I'm excited to do this. This podcast started by you and Christian. Is that who was just on with us?
Yes, sir.
Is Christian a metal guy?
Christian is a metal guy. Yes.
I am. Yes. Yeah.
Christian, and are you? What's your background?
I've worked in podcasting and in radio. I worked for Dennis Miller for a long time. And,
Get out of here.
Yeah.
Was Dennis grumpy?
I mean, we did a radio show that started at 7 a.m. So, and he got to do it from his house. But yeah, it's so, sometimes that first hour was a little touch and go. But yeah, no, he was always good to me. I never had to ask the company for a raise because he told them to give me more than I would have ever imagined asking for. Wow. So he was always great to me. I've known him for like 20 years. I just talked to him for like 40 minutes last week. So
wow. Dennis Miller's one of my favorite comedians. I know that he can be prickly. Thank God. The one time I met him, he was great. But man, I did a show once with Louis Anderson in Minneapolis. There's another comedian on the bill who's a friend of Louis that also worked for Dennis. What was that guy's name? He was a writer for Dennis. And he had this amazing story about when I asked him, I said, hey, is Dennis, was he grumpy? And he goes, yeah, and he told me one story. And this story is incredible. He said, we went to go do the Larry King show. And we're walking out of the studios of Larry King, and there's a limo waiting for us about 500 feet away on a sidewalk. And I see a guy standing next to the limo, and he has a stack of Dennis Miller albums and Dennis Miller books. And somehow he got a Letterman jacket from the Dennis Miller show. This guy is a Dennis Miller super fan. And this comedian is telling me, I'm looking at this guy going, oh, man. This guy's about to have one of the worst experiences of his life. And to his surprise, Dennis walks up and goes, hey, buddy, what you got there? You want me to sign those? Here, give me a Sharpie. Signs every book, signs every album. Here you go. There you go. You want to take a picture? Come on, let's take a picture. Let's do this. They take a picture. Couldn't be nicer. They get in the limo. Limo starts taking off. And this comedian goes, that was nice. How you treated that guy out there? And he goes, oh, the guy on the sidewalk? You didn't think he was retarded? He thought he was mentally handicapped, and that's why he was nice to him. I love that story.
My guess is that it's probably David Feldman who told you that story, but
no, it wasn't David Feldman, because David Feldman yelled at me at a comedy club once, and I would remember like, oh shit, here comes this guy again. Yeah, no, David Feldman screamed at me at a comedy club once, and so I think I've been around him once or twice and just prayed to Jesus that he wouldn't remember my face. So
you're probably not the only one with that story. Hang on one second.
Yeah, and by the way, the concept of this show is actually Christian's idea. So he came up with the idea. So
really,
yeah, he heard me on Eddie Trunk and said, "Hey, would you be interested in doing a podcast?" I said, "Sure." And he had the concept, and then it took us a while to get it around to doing it. But I went on the Metallica podcast, and they liked what I was doing, and said, "Want to do a podcast?" I said, "Well, I have one already conceived," and we talked to them, and yeah, here we are doing it now.
Wow.
Yeah, and unfortunately, I'm very unfortunate to be indebted to Don Jameson, because I knew Don knew Brian, so I could get in touch with Brian that way. And then we thought we were going to do the show for a different company, and then it all fell apart. And then I was like, "Hey, Don, what about the company you do?" And that's the company we do it for. So, Brian, you don't owe Don anything, but I gave him $100 gift card to Amoeba, and I felt like that was enough.
Well, that's fine. I mean, look, he's indebted to me because I keep putting out his records for no reason.
Well, listen, man. The reason why we're here is something we're all passionate about: music, and specifically when you threw this idea at me, I tried to think of. I mean, I really kind of struggle with like, well, everyone's going to do this band, everyone's going to do that band, right? And then I just thought, well, let me try to think. Like, I really tried to think outside the box of what might not have already been brought up yet. And there was a couple bands I was thinking of, and I threw out System of a Down first, and you said, yeah, that's perfect. Let's do System of a Down. And then someone gives you the artist, and then you pick the song.
Well, I have a list that I put together that Christian made me put together, but I have a list. And System's on the list, but I didn't have a song quite yet, because I figured it was going to be a while before we got to it. So when you mentioned it, I go, that's perfect, because I want to get to that. And I think they're a very important band, because, the whole concept is, 100 songs to define heavy metal. And while System isn't, they don't think of themselves as a metal band or even a heavy band necessarily. I just spoke to Dave Schiffman, who engineered all their records, and he had some great stories about that. But for me, like, they came around like right in that early 2000s when metal was just kind of coming back around after it was pretty much dead in the 90s. And System, more than a lot of other bands too, became a gateway to metal for a lot of people, because they were a very mainstream, hugely popular band, and a lot of people that like different types of music like System, but that was kind of their first foray into metal. And then they found out about Maiden and Metallica and further on. So they're hugely important. And I picked this song because these two records, Hypnotize and Mesmerize, are my two favorite System records, which probably isn't the most popular opinion, but I thought those two records were the heaviest records that they did, and also came around again at a time, kind of that mid 2000s. It was really important. And this song ends up being one of their most popular songs. So it's kind of worked out really well.
Yeah. And the political slant they've had, I'm always open to hearing anything from anybody's point of view, and listening to them talk in interviews about their political stances has always been really interesting. And I love that they put those thoughts into their songs. And so when you picked this song, I thought, oh, that's a good one. And it's interesting because it's open to interpretation, but when it comes to this band, there was a quote that I just saw within the last year or so. I saw an interview with Rick Rubin, who said that he had heard about System of a Down, and he went to go see them at, what was that place that Johnny Depp used to own? On
Viper
Hollywood?
Room?
The Viper Room. Saw him at the Viper Room, and he had heard a lot about this band, and he watched them, and he said the first song starts, and he said he just started laughing. He said, I was laughing because of how perfectly outside the box it was. This Middle Eastern influence and metal. He was like, I couldn't believe what I was listening to. He just said, I just started laughing. It was just so perfect. It was so perfect and so unique. And I really relate to that. It's such a unique sound that it just continues to suck me in, and I just love the uniqueness of this band and the uniqueness of the 4 different guys that make up this band. They're so all over the place, personality wise. You know?
Yeah, and that a lot of times creates an amazing band. Slayer, the original Slayer, was the same way. Like those guys, none of them really hung out with each other. They weren't super friendly with each other, but when they got on stage or when they were in the studio, they created magic. And I think it's pretty similar for System. I don't know those guys at all, but from what I've heard, you know, they don't all get along really well either, but it works on stage, it works in the studio, and sometimes all those different backgrounds and even musical tastes add to kind of the pot of boiling soup that they're creating. That's music.
There's been times when they've actually talked about each other in the press, which can be really dangerous to the overall health of a band. And yeah, I remember there was some stuff where one guy said something, another guy replied, and I remember there, and I can't remember the specifics of it. It was during COVID. There was social media posts from one guy that another guy said, well, that's not the way I think. And then he replied to it, and the other guy replied, and they went back and forth. But they've managed to still keep it together. I mean, it is still a family, a dysfunctional one like any other. But man, those 4 guys, I have a personal connection to those guys because they've been so kind to me that they actually had me open for them. I did a stand-up comedy set opening for them at a 20,000 seat amphitheater in Toronto. And a couple of those guys I stay in touch with pretty regularly. And I also do a running joke about the drummer who I love. He's got one of the best senses of humor. This guy is so honest. I did a show one night. Me and Jim Brewer did a gig in Manhattan at a comedy club in New York. Ozfest was in town with a day off, and a bunch of Ozfest bands came to this comedy club to see us. And there was it would be one table with one artist, one table with another artist, one table with another artist. They all were kind of hanging out in their own groups. And Brewer, I'm going on before Brewer, and I ate it. I tried doing something to appeal to these Ozfest bands, and it didn't click, and I ate it. I get off stage, Brewer's about to go up, and I walked around the room, and I apologized to everybody. I went to a table of guys from Disturbed, and I said, hey, man, sorry about that. And all the guys at that table said, oh, no, man, you're hilarious. And I went, no, I'm not. Then I went to a Seven Dust table, and I said, hey, guys, sorry about that. And everyone at the Seven Dust table was like, no, dude, you killed it. And I was like, no, I didn't. I go to the System of a Down table, and I go, hey, guys, sorry about that. And John, the drummer, goes, come here. He goes, come on, we're going for a walk. I go, what? And he goes, come on. He walks me outside. He turns around, and he goes, you want to know why you sucked? I'll tell you exactly why you sucked. First of all, why'd you open with this joke? Like, what the fuck was that? And he goes, and you're known for impressions. You didn't do any impressions for 5 minutes. And I go, yeah, no, you're right. You're right. And he just bullet point by bullet point, he nailed everything I knew in my mind I had done wrong. And I just so appreciated his honesty that I call him every time I'm going to do a roast or something that's unique where I really have to do a lot of homework. I always call him to run my jokes past him because he's so honest with me that I know he'll tell me the truth about what he thinks about things.
Well, it's interesting you say that because when I was talking to Dave Schiffman, who again engineered all the System of a Down records, and I was asking him, like, when you're doing this song, because a lot of times when you're in the studio, you're making a song and you don't really realize it's good or it's not good. I said, what were you guys, when you guys were doing this song, could you feel something special? He goes, we could feel something here. And in fact, the drummer in the middle of recording, went outside to the studio and called their manager and said, "You need to come down here and listen to this. This is something really special that's going on here right now." So he's not only for comedy, but also for music. He's got a pretty good perception there.
Yeah. And I'll never forget him telling me, he said, "I am not criticizing you to hurt your feelings. I'm criticizing you because I love you. And I love you and I want to see you be the best comedian ever. And if I'm going to be your friend, I'm going to tell you when I think you suck." And I was like, I can't argue that.
Yeah. I think every artist needs that. I mean, when I go to see bands, like, I'm brutally honest with them. Like, I'll that's why guys like Metallica, who not very many people say anything bad ever about them in their face.
Mhm.
But I'll go and they'll go, "How was the show?" And I'll go, "Yeah, it was pretty good. There's this song was it," because there are very few people that can kind of break down that they trust who can be honest with them about it. Because everybody else will go, "Oh yeah, it was great, amazing,"
Yeah.
So it's important. All artists need that, and they want that kind of honest feedback.
Brian, I could sidetrack this whole thing for hours, but my God, isn't it tough being in a position as you have been to deal with 4, 5 sensitive egos? And how do you communicate? Like, again, I could sidetrack this for hours, but I just want an answer to one question. If you will, just for me, when you hear an idea that you don't like and you're allowed to have input on something, how do you go about when you've heard something that sucks? It just sucks. How do you communicate that to them?
Yeah, it's an art form a little bit, but I try not to be like really. I'm not going to go like, "Hey, this sucks." I would
Of
go,
course, it
"Hey,
is an art form.
yeah," I go, "Hey, look, like what you're doing." And look, I'm not a songwriter; I can't play anything, so my opinion is more just about the feel of a song or whatever it is, the album cover,
Mhm,
a mix. And if it's
mhm.
something that I don't feel good, I'll go like, "Hey, I'm not really feeling this a little bit. Maybe we could take it in this different direction, or maybe you can try something a little bit different." And for the most part, it's good. Thankfully, I don't have to deal with that very often. I'm pretty
Yeah.
lucky that most of the time we get stuff. But recently, there's been a couple albums that we were dealing with that I didn't think sounded very good,
Mm.
and the band thought that it sounded pretty good. So those are a little testy, where I go, "I don't know, man. I don't hear I'm not hearing what you're hearing." And you
Mhm.
usually get to a point where you kind of meet in the middle a little bit, and it works.
You'd
But yeah,
hope to.
it's not easy at all. But I try to come from a place where I'm not criticizing them too much, but I'm also like just giving an opinion of it. And for the
Yeah.
most part, because I've been doing this for so long, I guess people respect that opinion. So
Yeah.
usually it works out pretty good.
Yeah, it's a weird spot to be in where you have to communicate, but you have to be very careful in how you communicate it. And I sometimes find myself in those kind of situations as a comedian. I'll be in a group situation where I'm writing for a project or or a roast or something. And my feelings get hurt if I go, "Hey, what if we did blah blah blah?" and nobody laughs, and I go, or not. I don't know. That's not. I mean, I was thinking maybe I'll keep working on that. Like, oh, creatively, there can be a lot of hurt
Yeah.
feelings
Well, yeah,
in
and
that
comedy
job.
especially. That's so hard
Yeah,
to
yeah.
make people laugh.
But these 4 guys in System of a Down have such a unique sound, and they've displayed it in so many different colorful ways. And then then there's guys like Shavo who also have a creative input on their music videos, and he's directed a lot of their music videos that also have a unique look to it. I know that Shavo, God, I used to do this, and I haven't done it in a long time, but I remember Shavo saying that in his travels around the world, he on days off would take pictures off of the walls in his hotel room and just paint, and he would just do a painting on the back of the photos, and then hang them back up and then leave. So
How
he's
is
got
that
art.
possible? Aren't all the everything every time I'm in a hotel, those things are like nailed or screwed onto the walls?
Yeah, I mean, I don't know which hotels he's staying at that does it. Sometimes they're nailed to the wall, sometimes they're not. I guess it depends on what kind of a hotel you're staying at. But he said he would do that regularly. So there is hidden art from Chavo around the world. I'm not sure if I was supposed to say that out loud,
Well, good luck finding
but
it.
but I just think it's a neat thing that he's out there just constantly needing to create.
Yeah.
And
Look,
even
artists need to create. Yeah.
yeah, and even in these last few years, as System of a Down has slowed down in the last 15 years, they still create projects. And I know Darren and John did Scars Over Broadway. I mean, Chavo's new band is great. Is already getting a lot of traction that they're doing. They're getting put on a lot of festivals, and they're creative guys who need to create.
Yep. So where did you first become aware, or when did you first become aware of System of a Down?
They were the first band on the bill at an Ozfest tour. And I remember just thinking they were so odd and so weird. I swear I can remember Chavo humping something on the stage. And I just remember thinking, like, these guys they're just so different. And so I didn't quite understand what had just happened. And Darren has always struck me as, I used to think he was crazy. And now I think he has an incredible sense of humor, because he constantly, his vocals are so over the top that I think he's just got a great sense of humor. And that has been solidified by watching how he talks during shows. And I don't have an example off the top of my head, but he just says funny shit during shows that are just absurd and don't make any sense. And they make me laugh out loud. And again, all those elements, just that first time I was going, I don't know what I just saw. I don't understand what I just saw. And then there was a tour that came through. It was Slipknot, System, and somebody else. I remember taking Big J Okerson to see that tour, and System just continued to get bigger and bigger and bigger. And it seemed like it was Sugar was the song that first, wasn't that their first single, Sugar?
I think so, from the first album. Yeah,
from the first album.
Is it? I forget which one, but one of those two.
So that song, again, really unique, and it just stuck with me. And then over the years, as they continue to put out more music, it was just so unique that it proved that point of what everybody says: don't try to be like anybody else, just do your own thing.
100%.
Man, have they nailed it, and they've become my favorite band.
Well, and there's what's interesting about that is that they are so unique and so different and unlike anything else we've heard, but they're massively popular. Like these two records, Mesmerize and Hypnotize, came out within 6 months of each other. Mm-hmm. Both debuted on the Billboard chart at #1. I think the only other band that ever did that, there's some statistic, I forget exactly what it is, but the only other band that did that was the Beatles. So like You're talking about, next level stuff that these guys are doing. And I have to admit, I'm not the biggest System of a Down fan. Massive respect. I think they're great. I really love these last two records. Mm-hmm. But man, they've hit a chord to so many people. And maybe it's just because there's so many people that like different types of music that listen to them. They're not just a metal band. They've got the Middle Eastern stuff, and there's all these other various influences that they're drawing in all these different people, and they've become massively huge, which is always good for any heavy band to do, in my opinion.
Another thing they've done that I think is interesting is something that people would attribute to the success of Metallica. That Metallica was always outside the box, and they were always outside the mainstream, and that they didn't go to the mainstream. The mainstream came to Metallica. And I think System of a Down's political tones were outside the box, but we've become way more political as a society. And so we've met that band in that world because of what's happened in this world and in this country in the last 20 years. And they it's interesting to watch their shows that you walk around in a System of a Down show, and it always catches me that people dance they dance during System of a Down shows. You see girls dancing during the shows, and it's just rhythmic enough that you can dance during the show. And then it's just such a crazy combination of sounds that just works. That it's got that heavy sound, but you can see women dancing, and it doesn't seem bizarre. It's not like watching a girl like dance to South Side of Heaven. You know what I mean? It's like, oh yeah, that fits, that works, you know?
But it's also, if you look at the underlying music that they're doing, it's got the, kind of quirky elements to it, and there's definitely some pop and some other influences. But then like the driving parts of it are like super heavy. Like you're talking like thrash metal, death metal heavy. It's really interesting how all that stuff comes together.
Yeah, and it works. It all works. It is the oddest, strangest combination of 4 guys, and it just works. And yeah, personality-wise, they're all over the place,
Yeah, but that's the magic, when you get 4 people or however many in a band put together, and just for whatever reason, it comes together, and they all provide something there, and it's just how huge they become. And that's why I felt, they're obviously an important band to talk about on this podcast, and specifically this song, because in the heavy metal world, as we call it, you need diversity, you need different stuff. You don't want everything just to be the same. Like I love everything from Metallica to Cannibal Corpse and everything in between, and all these bands on the fringes, and that's all what makes a scene. And I love that all these metal fans can be into and love a band like System of a Down, which really isn't inherently necessarily a metal band.
And it's crazy that their level of success just continues to grow inadvertently from their 1 or 2 guys not wanting to tour. And from that lack of presence in live music, when they do a show, it's massive.
Oh yeah, I mean, I have friends that are huge fans, and they, what's the absence makes the heart grow fonder, right? So it's kind of like the less they are around, the more people want them. I mean, same thing happened with Slayer when they kind of,
I was just gonna say that. I was just gonna say, you and I had a conversation where you said, in my opinion, and to me, your opinion is like, well, this is what Brian said. So I and you said, in my opinion, they'll never stand on stage together again, no matter how much money they
yeah, and that's coming from Carrie. I mean, we're really good friends with Carrie, and Carrie told me that, and Carrie's a man of his word. But you don't realize how important they are to people. And I mean, look, I mean, say what you will, but I mean, they got offered insane money. Where like, look, I get it. Like, you can't walk away from that type of money. It's like as well as those guys do, it's still kind of life-changing money. And also, more importantly than that, I don't think they were aware of how the fans missed them so much, and people's lives were crushed when the whole thing happened. So I'm happy they came back, and they're not going to do a full tour most likely, but they'll do shows here and there. And man, I didn't go, unfortunately, to any of the shows that they did last summer, but I saw some of the footage, and like the fans it was almost like a religious experience, which crazy talking about a Slayer thing, but yeah, it's amazing.
And can I say, on a selfish note, that as a comedian, I've spent time with Carrie, and as a comedian, Carrie is a very stoic guy, and I really take it as one of my greatest accomplishments as a stand-up comedian that I have told him jokes, and I've managed to get him to do this. And this is, for Carrie King, this is a huge break. I've gotten Carrie King to do this. That's massive. That is fucking massive. I did a video series for a while where I would say, hey, do you mind? And he always was up for it. I'd go, I want to do a quick 60-second video called Can I Make a Guy from Slayer Laugh? And he goes, all right, let's do it. And then I'll tell him like a kid's joke. What kind of a bee makes milk? A booby. Get it? Because All right. I guess the answer is no. I cannot make a guy from Slagel. And then we'll stop filming and Carrie will go, that was funny. And I go, oh, you should have laughed, man. Why are you fucking with me? Come on, man. Like, yeah. So
he's though, I mean, you know, he has the gruff exterior, right? But he's like one of the nicest, best humans on the planet. I absolutely love that guy.
That dude 100% loves stand-up comedy. I love his wife. They are amazing people. And you're right. He has that gruff exterior. And dude, people lose their shit around that guy when they.
Oh, I know. I see it all the time because we go to Raider games. We go a lot of places together. I see that. And it just blows my mind. It's the same thing with the Metallica guys too, where I just know them. I've known these guys most of all of our lives, since we're all teenagers basically. And it always freaks me out a little bit when I see how much just meeting these people and talking to them for a minute, how much they means to them and what they've gone through in their lives and how much the music has touched them. And that always kind of blows me away. You're like, yeah, they're just, these are my friends, but I kind of forget that they have done things that do a lot of good for people.
Same. There's comedians I started out with who are just crushing right now. And it's kind of a trip to see them get to the level that they're at. And then when you're around them, it's crazy to see the world that they've created around them. So yeah, I definitely get that. But when you do these things, how many episodes are you in right now on this?
So I think this is episode 14 or 15, something like that. We're still early on.
And as it continues to take shape, what are some of the benchmarks that you find yourself doing with each one of these analysis videos?
I'm trying to have fun. Like I'm just having fun. I'm bringing all so far it's just, all friends of mine. So it's nice to see them. In some cases, I haven't seen some of these guys for a while. So it's good to see them. I just want to come and just hang out like we're in a bar or a restaurant, and just talk about music and how it affects people and what it does. So I'm just, just having fun. There's no, as with anything I've ever done, I don't have any goals or any perceptions of how it's going to do or anything. So far people seem to like it. So far, so good.
You are the most unassuming staple in metal, and everyone who brings your name up says the same thing. Like, that guy could be more like relaxed down or more normal. And I think anyone who meets you in public must be thrown when you tell them what you do for a living, or what your background is, because you're just such an unassuming person.
Look, I'm just a music fan like everybody else is, so it's all good.
Do you ever get mistaken for somebody else? Did anybody ever say, "Hey, I know you," but they're just a little bit off and they think you're somebody else?
Oh, well, 100%. The main one is Götz Kundemann, who's a very famous writer in Germany. He's written for Metal Hammer and Rock Hard and all these. So we look very, very, very similar. And whenever I go to Germany, a lot of times at festivals, people will come up to me and start speaking in German, and they think I'm him. And he's had the same thing happen in the US, where somebody will go up to him and say, "Hey, Brian, what's going on?" And so,
really?
So yeah, big time doppelgangers. So
I love that.
Yeah, it's pretty funny. We actually did an interview once for, I think the Rock Hard had like a video show or something in Germany. We interviewed each other as the other person. So
oh, that's great. I love that.
It was pretty funny. But dude, we could talk all day, and but I really, really appreciate you doing this. And yeah, thanks a lot. And it's such a great song and a great band to talk about. So really appreciate it. And down the road, we might have to have you on again.
Dude, I've got so many stories, but more importantly, it gives me a chance to be able to ask you for stories, because in casual conversation, I never want to bother you for stuff. It's another friend of ours in Vegas, Eddie Trunk. We'll be hanging out talking about football because we both love football. And then it almost pains me to not go, so what do you think about, like, I just want to pick his brain and ask his opinion about bands that I love, that I know he loves too, or just analyzing, as we have done our whole lives. You fall in love with this kind of music and you just break it down. You look at the album artwork, the names and the credits, and you love this music so much that you just gravitate towards other people who also love this music, and you just want to analyze and overanalyze it. I do the same thing about stand-up, but
don't Don't be shy, man. I hang out with Eddie all the time, and that's what we do. We go back and forth about bands we love, and that's what you do. We're all fans, so don't be shy about that stuff.
Well, I'm grateful you gave me a chance to come on and talk about System. I'm excited they're going to do more shows this year. I couldn't believe they announced as many dates as they have. I mean, for them, it's almost like announcing a world tour to announce that many shows, because they only do 1 or 2 shows a year, if at all. So, I appreciate you having me come on and just, I don't know how many of these stories are going to stay in it, because there's 1 or 2 that I told that I thought, is this going to stay in here? Because
we got edited. I'm sure it'll get edited a bit, but it's all good. It was super fun. So,
all right, cool.
It'll all end up on YouTube at some point, though. So,
cool. Well, thank you, buddy. We'll be running into each other again soon, I'm sure.
Absolutely. Don't leave yet, because we got to upload your recording, so you can't leave.